Welcome to episode 2 of Her Mentor. I'm so excited for this week's episode because it is our first episode featuring a guest. This week, we will be talking to someone who truly represents exactly what I was seeking in this podcast and in the guests for this podcast. So, when I was dreaming up this concept, something I was really thinking about was how do we represent the types of women that we all work with every day and learn from them? Because I know for me, I'm constantly learning from the women in my life, whether it's a coworker, a manager, a friend, family member, whoever it might be. Really captures that energy. So we will be talking to Hannah, who I previously worked with. She is truly someone who is always going to be rooting for others to do good. She'll be the first one to congratulate you when you hit a milestone. She's also the first person to call out everyone that has helped her get to where she is. So when she hits a milestone, she's always like, wait, I couldn't get here without these people, which I think is such an admirable trait. So Hannah is awesome. Super excited for you guys to hear from her. Her story is that she started as a BDR, really did amazing in that role, and then eventually moved over to a CS role. So we will hear from her exactly how she made that transition, how she broke into tech, and just some advice in general for women in tech or in sales or in CS.
All right. So today we have Hannah joining us. I had the opportunity to work with Hannah for about 2 or 3 years, I think. And in the last, over 5 years, you've been working in sales roles, had the experience of working at, big companies and really small companies, selling a bunch of different kinds of software to different personas, different industries, kind of a mix of what you were selling and who you were selling to in that time frame. And then more recently joined a CS team at a public company. So big transition there, I would assume. Excited to kind of introduce you to my audience and share your experience.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kelly. I'm super excited to be here today, and I'm happy to share some of my experiences that I've had working in sales and also the transition moving over to CS. I wish we had something like this back when we were both BDRs, where we could, listen to other people talk about what they wish they did, wish they didn't do, maybe different career paths that they could take from, being a BDR like I did moving over to CS.
Yeah, why don't we start at the start then, kind of how you got into sales? I know that pretty much everyone in sales has this similar story. If I never thought that I would be in sales, I never saw myself as a salesperson, probably even had some negative connotations around that. So I'm so curious to understand. I know that you studied communications in college. I'm curious how you went from maybe pursuing like a communications career at the start of college, maybe that's what you were thinking, and then to sales. So kind of curious, how the heck did you end up in sales?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of crazy because years ago, I never thought I would be in the position that I am today. Never thought I would ever go into sales. But that quickly changed. Like you had mentioned, I studied communications at UMass Boston. Once I graduated, I started at a telecommunications company as an account manager. So managing several accounts, working closely with other sales reps, project managers, engineers, you name it. And during that process, or the time that I was at the telecommunications company, I believe it was like a little over 2 years, working alongside different sales reps and seeing the success that they were having. Money was a huge motivator for people. Just seeing the different possibilities that, could be possible in sales really piqued my interest. And I knew that after being at that company, that wasn't the exact product that I wanted to be selling, but I knew that, okay, I learned a lot of different skills as an account manager that could help me transition to maybe into an entry-level sales role. I reached out to a family friend. They put me in contact with the VP at an e-commerce marketing platform company. Interviewed there, accepted the job, was super nervous at the beginning. I remember I was going into a team where it was all men on the team, and there was just one other female that I was working with. And that was very intimidating at the time. Again, like I said, I had no experience in sales. They hired an account manager. I almost was like, I don't even know how I'm going to do this. To be honest, at the beginning, I didn't even understand really what I was doing.
Yeah.
With there being only one other female on the sales team, like I said, when I started, it was a very intimidating feeling. That quickly changed though, because I was pushed in a good way from the people on my team. And I learned a lot from the other men on my team that had been in sales for several different years. They had, years of AE experience. Some of the other people on the team had previous BDR experience. So really picked their brain right from the start. One thing that I found to be super helpful was in the BDR role, you don't have to be super product. You don't have to know deeply the ins and outs of the product.
Yeah.
But I think that doesn't matter. I think that you should try to learn the product as best as you can, no matter what role you're in, because that's only going to help you be able to better talk to people on the phone, writing email messaging. So, I mean, had a great experience. Like I said, loved kind of like the day-to-day to my job. I knew what I was coming into every day. Getting started on the computer, you're sending your emails, you're doing outreach, you're constantly prospecting on LinkedIn. Anything you can do to try to get in touch with a prospect that you're trying to reach out to and really pass that off to the account executive that you're working side by side with. And once I started seeing that I could do this, I was getting responses from the emails I was sending. I was getting positive responses from the phone calls that I was making to these prospects. And soon enough, those prospects turned into customers. I think it was my first quarter at that company that I think I had hit over 150%.
That's
Right
crazy.
And I was super motivated by that. And I know that was only one quarter, but I was like, wow, if I can do this, first quarter in, the sky is the limit at this point. And I showed up every day wanting to work hard, wanting to put in 110%. And I think my boss at the time had saw that, saw the drive that I had, and that, money was my motivator, and I was going to do any single thing that I could at that time to make sure I was hitting my target every month. And it really is, sales is the time that you put in, that's the money that you're going to get back from it. It's not an easy job. I think, writing a bunch of emails a day, making a bunch of looms, calling people, it can be tiring. But that's where I feel like you kind of have to look at the bigger picture and really when you're reaching out to specific people, think about like the why. If you were in their shoes and you were getting the email that you're sending that person, what would make you open that email and want to respond back to them, whether you want to buy the product or not?
I think that all of that brought up so many interesting points that I think are super relevant to anyone that's in an outbound role, but also people who are looking to get into them. Like something that you hit on, a few things, but the first one that stood out to me is how you even landed that job, being through a connection, which I think in the world of tech especially, that is so relevant and seems to be how most people land their jobs. Like I know that that's been my path ever since I landed a job in tech. Since then, every move I've made so far has been following other people that I've been connected with in some way or the other. So wanted to call that out for anybody who might be looking to break into sales. Like that is exactly how to do it. Build those connections with folks. Make sure that you have that good reputation once you land a role.
How I landed this job and, reaching out to a family friend, it's really all about, I hate to say it, who you know and your connections. Sometimes at these bigger companies, smaller companies, having an in and keeping your network open is so important. And I wish I knew this coming right out of college, to like be actively using LinkedIn, using other people that I either went to school with or college with, or adults that I had in my life at that time that worked at certain companies that I wanted to learn more about. I didn't do that enough. And luckily, you know, that this first time of reaching out to a family friend, it all worked out in a positive, you know, manner for me, but that's not always the case. And I think that people need to constantly be reaching out and picking people's brains. That if you see a company that you like and you know someone that works there, reach out on LinkedIn, send them a message, send them an email. So that's one thing that I wish I did, is, you know, adding more people that I went to high school with back into my LinkedIn, just those people that were in my circle. You know, if people grew up with you, they know the type of person that you are, or people that have worked with you, say, even if it was in high school or before college, like they know your work ethic, they'll put in a good word for you, and hopefully, you know, things will kind of fall into place from there.
Yeah. And even if you don't have that right away, like if you are surrounded by people who aren't in the tech space and you really want to get into it, there's so many people who are willing to have those conversations with you. Like if somebody reached out to me right now that was in college, and I'm sure that you're the same, and wanted to know about your job and how you ended up there, like most people are going to be willing to have a conversation with you. We've all been there. You're also looking into a job where you do have to just reach out to strangers all day, every day. That's what outbound is. Like that's what an SDR BDR role is. So there's no shame in like reaching out to people and seeing if you can pick their brain. Maybe there'll be an opportunity there, maybe there won't be, but you'll take something from all of those conversations, and you'll also take something just from putting yourself out there. So I think that either way, use your network, and if you don't have one, start to create one. There's so many avenues that you can use.
Totally. And there's another funny, perfect example. Like you could even be at the gym. I was doing a workout class the other day. There was a younger female in the class next to me. We started talking about a workout set. It started with a workout set, and then we started talking about work. Funny enough, she went to school. She goes to school in Boston. She has one semester left. It's kind of funny. I think she probably thought I was her age as well and asked me where I went to school. And I was like, I wish I was still in school. There's been many years since I've been in college, but I was really almost like proud of her. I don't even know this girl. And she was like, hey, can I get your phone number? I'm going to be graduating soon. I'm studying marketing right now. And I was like, I have so many friends that are working at different companies doing marketing or advertising or whatever it may be. Here's my number. Would be happy to put you in touch with one of my friends on LinkedIn or someone that I know at a company that might help you just even learn right out of college. And she was like, just the expression on her face was, she was so thankful, almost shocked. And I think people just don't talk about this stuff enough. Like it's no burden on me to help someone else or put them in contact with someone else if it's going to help them, or even help me learn about, maybe there's something I didn't know from this person that I'm going to connect them with, or whatever that may be.
People are willing to help. It can feel super uncomfortable to reach out to people and ask for help, but I love that you had that little experience and that girl felt comfortable enough just to like ask the question. Maybe she should look into sales because she's feeling bold.
Exactly.
Other thing I want to call it is like 150% first quarter, insane. Like that. Honestly, that wasn't my experience. My first quarter ever, I think I hit like 25% of my goal. And it was like really demoralizing for me. So I'm curious, how in your first month did you manage to do that? Like what did you do right at the start? Because I know if I could go back in time, there's like 50 things I would have done differently. And I'm curious for new reps who are just starting out, who maybe had a quarter like me where they hit, you know, basically 0% of their quota and aren't seeing that money and are like kind of panicking a little bit. What kind of advice would you have for them? Like, what did you do in your first quarter that made you so successful?
So first quarter, or it might have been, I don't know. It was definitely the first couple of months that I was off onboarding and hit the ground running. I will say there was two gentlemen that I reported to. It was a smaller team. I think there was only, I don't know, 8 people on the sales team. We reported to our VP. He was awesome. At the time, I learned so much from him, but I really would just put time on people's calendars. I would ask them, like, I would write an email and tag someone and say, hey, do you mind checking this over for me? I'm not sure if I'm hitting all the points. And after a while of getting like constant feedback from people, I could then take the tweaks that they were making in my messaging and change that and then send out, you know, several different emails, kind of using similar messaging, and then tweak it to the different persona that I was reaching out to at that time. But it was really just, again, trying to learn the product as best I could, playing around in the platform in my free time. Like, you think that you could have, I don't know, say you get into work and you look at your calendar and you're like, I only have 2 meetings today. And that's 2 hours, say that's 2 hours of your day. There's always something to be doing, whether it's prospecting, trying to get people into your pipeline, circling back on people that have not responded to you. I was so good about setting like snoozes in my Gmail to, if I had reached out to someone on Monday and haven't heard from them, I was following up with them on Wednesday. Like, I had such a strong cadence in so many touch points in my outreach that, I don't know, there was sometimes I was calling people 30 or 40 times within like a 3-month period of not hearing from them. And it's funny. I thought I was never going to get in touch with some of these people. Some of those people that it took me months to go after and get them ended up being customers. That's not the case in every experience that, you know, all the different phone calls, all the different emails that you make, all the different types of outreach that you do, that you're going to get someone that turns from a prospect into a customer. But you have to be eager and willing to put in the work and lean on other teammates to see, okay, what's working for you and what's not working? How can we pivot? And being able to pivot quickly. Something that worked for someone might not work for me.
You hadn't been in this kind of role before. So there's all these people around you that know how to do this role. They've done it before. They've been in sales at a tech company before, and you leveraged that earlier on, versus waiting and just like trying to watch what other people were doing and then figure it out. Like, ask the questions early, see what other people would do, and then take all of that knowledge in and learn from it. I think that that's like the most helpful thing to do at the start, especially like, I don't know about you, but when I started in my first SDR role, when I got hired, I didn't even really know what my day-to-day was going to look like, or like what anything meant. Like, people would say different acronyms or like assume that you would know things, but you don't know them at the start. Like, this is all new to you. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to get help from all these people who know what they're doing. I think where it becomes a problem is if you don't ask those questions and then you're 6 months in and you start asking the questions then. So I guess like, be comfortable not knowing and take in as much information as you can from everyone. I love that. It sounds like that's exactly what you did.
I'm going to say another thing just to touch on of like not knowing what your day-to-day is going to look like. I'll never forget when one of my managers told me, like, you have full control over your schedule. And when I was an account manager right out of college, I mean, it was a grind, 8 to 5, you're clocking in and out of work. I knew what my day-to-day pretty much was going to look like there. I knew that my day started at 8 and it ended at 5. I went from having such structure to no structure at all. And I had to create that. When I first started as an account manager, I was in office 5 days a week. I went from being in office 5 days a week to being out of office, fully remote 5 days a week with a blank calendar when I first started. And it's like, okay, I have this blank calendar. Like, what am I supposed to do all day? I highly recommend calendar blocks. The team lead that I worked with, I'll never forget, she would always tell me, follow your calendar blocks. And like, what you have blocked out at that time, do it. You may be working on something else for a different customer. And if that's not top priority, you need to switch, follow your calendar blocks, and then move on to the other thing. And I found that super helpful because I noticed during my day-to-days, I would be logging on and I would be at my computer from 9 to 5 with breaks in between and lunch or what have you. But I found myself for like a steady month just going in circles every day, like doing so much, but not finishing a specific task for a customer. And it's like, that's where I found myself failing. And then once I could figure out my schedule and following my calendar blocks and really like carving out that time for specific customers or specific accounts, that's when things changed. And that's when I started seeing myself become more successful, even in my outside life, like carving that block for the gym in the morning, carving out that block to go on a walk with the dog during the day. It's like, okay, at 12:30, I knew after lunch, I was taking a 30-minute walk and I would be ready and refreshed by 1 p.m. to hit the ground running and try to close more deals.
It's such a transition, like going from in office every day with pretty much set out, you have to be doing these things at these specific times. And there is an element too of like you're around other people physically who are doing the same thing as you, to now being at home in your own space. And you have all of this freedom of I can do whatever I want, pretty much whenever I want. I just have to hit these numbers is a huge transition. So I love what you said of calendar blocking. I'm curious in terms of calendar blocking, did you have like call blocks in the afternoon and morning? Like, what did that look like for you? Because I know reason why I'm asking is when I calendar blocked, I did mine not necessarily based on metrics that I needed to hit. I just did mine based off of energy levels. Like I knew if I was going to make calls and they were going to happen, it was going to happen in the morning. I am not the type of person. Some people are great at afternoon calls. And I know that there's some data even that says that afternoon calls sometimes do better. But I was not the type of person that was going to make any calls if I waited till the afternoon. So I'm curious how you blocked out your day and found something that actually worked for who you are as a rep.
Totally. I think that that's true in terms of exactly what you said, like more putting blocks more towards energy versus like exactly metrics. And I think it kind of changes, right? As a BDR, my day-to-day is obviously different than it is now as a CSM. And calls were huge. I believe at when we worked together, I think, what did we have to do? 50 to 100? Was it 100 dials a day or 50? I can't recall.
I think we were 50 for the most part. Yeah.
Then it bumped up a little bit. And then, yeah. But either way, you have to get those 50 calls in by 5 p.m., right? And it's like kind of what you said, based on energy levels. Every day is not going to be a perfect day. There were some days where I could follow the calendar blocks to a T and it was a great day. And then other days I had to pivot and shift, or like maybe I would open up my laptop in the morning and I wasn't feeling it right off the bat. And if I had a calendar block for calls, you probably recall we called them power hours.
Yeah.
And those are fun. But there were some mornings that I thought picking up the phone and making calls was how I wanted to start my day. And in the afternoon, I wanted to write emails. And I got to my computer that morning, was not in the mood to make calls. I felt like email writing for me was a better choice at that time. All I did was switch the blocks. So in the morning, I switched from email or calling to email writing. In the afternoon, I was calling versus email writing. It was an energy thing. So like if I was already cranking and starting like 5-10 dials in, I wanted to get those 50 dials done.
I can speak to the fact that Hannah did this very well when we worked together. She would always have all of her dials done pretty much for the day before some people even got online. And you had success with morning calls too. Like you catch people on their way to work if they're in the office. You catch people like as they're grabbing their coffee to sit down at their desk maybe. So there is some success there in doing those early, but just like actually getting it done is hope that there's SDRs listening who start implementing calendar blocks 100%, start asking questions, learn from people around you. Don't be afraid to reach out and just put time on people's calendars. If there's an AE that's doing really well, reach out to them. If there's a BDR, SDR that's been there for a long time and is like crushing their quota, talk to them. So I think that all of that is super helpful. Hope some SDRs start doing that. I want to transition a little bit though to how you ended up where we met. So we met at another tech startup that you were at after this one, but I like the story of how you ended up there. And I think it speaks a lot to something that we had already talked about before, of connections and the importance of like showing up and giving your all, and also like nurturing those connections that you have. So I'm curious, like in your words, how you ended up at the company that we were at together.
transitioned from the first tech company that I was at to the company that we met at together. The team lead at the time at the first startup, she decided to leave for a management role over at the company that we met at together. And she really liked it. I saw her posting a lot on LinkedIn. So I messaged her, outside of work and was just like, hey, like, want to pick your brain. You did really well at the first company that we were at, and you seem to like this company even more. Like, you seem to like, energy is great. You love your team, love the work that you're doing, like, want to hear more about it. And so constantly, like, I was following up with her. And I was hesitant at first because I had just been promoted. I was the first outbound BDR at the first tech company ever, because it was inbound at first, and that's what I was doing. And then they needed someone doing more outbound. And at that time, I was one of the most successful people on the team, numbers wise, so that they had moved me over to outbound. And at the time, I thought that I wanted to be an AE. I thought that that was going to be my next step, to be honest, at that company that I was at. But I wanted to change. It had been over 2 years. I felt like I was not really progressing. I mean, I was still hitting my numbers, but it's just, I wanted more. So again, yeah, talked with her outside of work, and I was like, I'm really interested. Went through a couple of rounds of interviews, ended up getting the job. And it's funny, I ended up actually being on her team, so was able to work with her again. And it was super awesome to work with her. And again, learned so much from her at my time at the company that we were all working together at. And that's how I met you. You were on the team. And it's funny, I think you actually trained me when we started working. Did you forget about that?
I might have. I can't entirely remember. That's so fun. That team in general was a really fun dynamic. And I think a big part of that had to do with our manager.
Yep.
She definitely prioritized making sure that we connected as a team and that we focused a lot on knowledge sharing and actually liking each other as more than just people that we were competing against to like be at the top of the leaderboard. We definitely did celebrate more of like our team hitting quota versus just like, okay, this one person hit 150%. It was like, no, like our team all hit quota this month. Or we went through some challenges for sure with like just different market changes. This was just around a time where tech was going through a lot for a bit there. And we always like had fun with what we were doing. So loved that team.
And I know so many people that are working on other teams where company is great, but everyone's quiet on the team. No one really chats, no one communicates. And when you're working from home and you're by yourself all day long, I don't care how many times you're picking up the phone, calling people, sending out emails. It's not the same. Like if you were in an office, I'd be running over to your cube saying, hey, good morning, going for a coffee together before work started. Like you miss out on so many of those pieces when you work from home, that having a manager that creates that space where it's a one, safe space, but two, also, no stupid question, no question's a dumb question. And everyone on the team, what I felt at the time, like we all became friends. Like it was fun. We had laughs, but we all worked hard and we celebrated each other. And I think that that's huge, like company culture, and was huge for me. And we got that when we were on the same team together. And I think that's what motivated me every day to want to show up, want to succeed, want to help other people on my team, and want to hit quota. If you don't have the energy and a fun team and people that you trust and you can work with and don't make you feel stupid or don't make you feel less than, those things are what's going to help you then hit numbers, have the drive, want to succeed.
Totally. And we're still in contact with a lot of the girls that we work with. Like there's men that we're in contact with too, but I think that as women in sales, a lot of times it can be a slightly different experience for us. So there's still like I know that we're in at least a couple of group chats together with other girls that we used to work with, and none of us work together anymore, but we still stay in contact about like professional things, but also just like checking in on each other, making sure that everyone's still doing well. Because we did have an environment that was very much focused, yes, on like doing well at work, but also making sure that everybody was doing well outside of work and celebrating everything that was going on in their lives. Like, I know you got married when we were at that company, and we had like a bridal shower virtually for you and another coworker.
So funny.
So it was just like a really fun environment. I think that that's something really special about BDR teams too. The other thing that you mentioned was you were looking for some career growth in that role that you had been in, and then you switched over this new company that you're at. And once again, I'm assuming that career growth was part of, you know, what you were looking for. You'd mentioned AE is what you were maybe chasing, but we know now, like power of, you know, being in the future, I guess. We know now that you ended up taking the CSM route. So I'm curious, kind of like, how did you figure that out? I know a little bit of how that happened, but I'm curious, like, when you got to this new company, is there anything that you did right away to kind of put out there, like long term, I think I want to be an AE, or long term, I'm interested in exploring this?
No, that's a great question, because usually people, I would say a majority of people, go from SDR, BDR to outbound or inbound, whatever route that looks like for their specific company. And then they move on to like junior AE, then senior. And from what I see out of the people in my network, you don't typically really see people go from BDR to CS. And it's funny, I had a lot of people that I know ask me, you're so good in your sales role and you really liked that. Like, are you sure this is the move that you want to make? And I don't need to be sure right now. I'm 29 years old. Like, if I'm enjoying the CS route right now and I'm loving it, like in a year or two, I might change my mind and say, yeah, I do want to go back into sales. And do I think that I could still do that? 100%. I think the skills, so kind of transitioning over into why I wanted to move over to CS and kind of what that looks like right now. Solving for the customer. I know as a BDR, I wasn't really able to do that, because after, you know, I would get that lead and say, yeah, they responded to me over an email or via a phone call. It would really be, you know, a quick introduction call, maybe before passing it over to the account executive, asking, you know, these general questions that would then help the AE determine, you know, this company is a good fit, how I'm going to sell to them. And like, you know, then they would get on another call. I just felt like as I was asking those qualification questions, I personally wasn't still solving for the customer. That next person was going to. Being a BDR, I loved the sales grind. Right now, where I'm at in my career, I wanted to pivot and solve more for the customer. Like I said, I went to school for communications. I love having face-to-face Zooms with people, talking to people. Like, I preferred talking to people or a prospect on the phone when I was a BDR versus sending them an email. Because I got them on the phone. I was able to ask questions, able to kind of get more information out of them. And that's what you do as a CS. You're solving for the customer. You're asking them questions. They're coming to you, either saying, how could I be using the product better? Or I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, how does this work? And I love knowing how the product works and being able to get on a call with a customer and seeing them not understand anything from the start of the call, and then leaving the call being like, wow, that was so helpful. That made so much sense.
Yeah.
That to me is so satisfying. I love that piece. I love ending my call being like, wow, I either helped this customer get through such a challenging problem that they couldn't get through on their own, or helping a customer or showing them certain things, say, for example, in their platform that they didn't even know existed. Like, I get so excited sharing, and like I said, I'm going to go back to this phrase, solving for the customer.
I love that so much because it kind of represents who you are as a person too. Like you've always been somebody who's always looking to jump on a Zoom if somebody does have a question and answer that. So it feels like a perfect match for your personality. And I'm sure too, like as an AE, you get a little piece of that. And if you're working the renewals for that account, you might see how the product is helping them long term. But as a CSM, I'm sure that you'll have like monthly check-ins with some of your accounts and then see like, oh, that thing that I taught them 2 months ago, it's actually driving results for them now. And I'm seeing this in a report that I've pulled for them that proves that this thing that I did was actually helpful and that they're getting benefit from it and having other ideas based on that. You actually can build that long-term relationship and almost be a part of their team in a way where you are helping them continuously solve and improve.
It's so funny that you mentioned that. And it's funny that you said, like you're kind of like a team now once you're working with them. Like I love having an email thread with a couple people on it from a company and saying like, hey team, like kind of like what you were saying, it's you become more than just, it's more than just that pass off. And that's what it was. And what I felt like it was going to be in the AE role. It's like, you know, you sell them this deal and you're passing them off. And as an AE, you're not really going to speak to those people ever again, unless they email you. And then you again, as an AE, you pass them off to their dedicated, again, what I am, the success rep. And, you know, not every day is amazing in CS land. Like there, you're having tough conversations too. You know, you're going to have that as a BDR as well. There's days where you're not getting any dials or any responses to emails. There's days in the CS world where have 3 calls and I think that they're going to go really well. And it's angry customers because something's not working that's out of my scope. And that's more of like a solutions issue or a product issue. But having the patience and really like getting those people back down to like, okay, like here's the problem. Here's what we're going to do to fix it. And here's a timeline of like when you can expect it to be fixed.
Yeah.
And then following that journey through until either that problem gets solved or, you know, helping them through something difficult. Like you said, you're doing weekly check-ins, you're doing monthly check-ins. And I just liked that instead of having that pass off relationship with people. But again, it's different for everyone. Some people like, you know, jumping in, getting that prospect in, closing that deal, and then passing it off. Whereas some people, you know, like having the face-to-face conversations. I know AEs that they ask me like, why would you like, you know, wanting to talk to the same person all the time and like do monthly? It's different. Like, again, it goes back to the pass off. Do you want to have that kind of quick relationship with the customer, or do you want like a lasting, continuous relationship?
Yeah. I'm curious in terms of, so we both had similar experiences that are not very traditional in how we ended up getting our kind of like our ticket out of BDR land. I guess just for context of people listening who don't know Hannah or I or kind of how we ended up in our roles, but we were at a smaller company. It got acquired by a bigger company. And with that, we didn't need an outbound team anymore. So we all got moved into different roles. And you ended up moving to a CS role, and I ended up moving to an AE role. For me, I think that the reason why I moved that way is I had been applying to AE roles internally. They knew where I wanted to be. I'm curious how, at that stage of the game, what were you doing so that by the time that there was a CS role available, they came to you and they said, okay, do you want to be a CSM now? Like what steps did you take so that when that opportunity came up that you were the person to take that?
Absolutely. So my manager at the time, before we got acquired, you know, we were always, in which I loved about both of these female managers that I had in the past, it's like they were always asking like, what do you want? They always wanted to see us grow, like wanted to know what our next step was going to be. Like I would say 6 months in, it's like, okay, not 6 months, but like a year in, it was kind of like we started to have those conversations. Yeah. What's going to be your next move? Like, what do you want to see happen in your career? Where do you think you want to go? What's going to happen then? And I had my manager at the time contact with the manager on the CS team. And I remember just jumping on a Zoom, picking that manager's brain about CS. After that conversation, it was always kind of in the back of my head, like, what if this BDR role doesn't work out? Or like, do I want to be a BDR forever? If it's not an AE, am I just going to stay as a BDR? Like, what really could be the next step? And then it got to a point, couple months in, was still, I think we were there like a month after we got acquired, and I got a ping from another manager. They were looking for, they needed more help on the CS team. And it was almost kind of like the stars were aligning there, because I was like you said, we no longer needed an outbound BDR team. I was either going to be pushed over to the AE team without really like having a choice, or this other choice was a CS role. And at that time, I was more so in my head, like, not wanting to take the AE role, and the CS role sounded better at that time, just for where I was at in my life and where I'm at now.
Yeah.
And thank God, because I love it. Like, I love showing up to work every day. I loved my time as a BDR, and all of those skills helped me greatly in the CS role, from the BDR side. But that's kind of how that happened. I wouldn't say it was like I was forced into it. It was kind of more so like, here are your two options, but this is where the most help is going to be needed on the CS side. So I kind of use that as like, they need help. I can show them like my skills that I learned from BDR and show them like how I could be an asset to their team today.
Yeah, and it was something that you had already kind of explored too as like a potential option. So it's interesting how everything kind of lined up to land there. Something I do want to touch on quickly, if you feel comfortable about it, is because these are conversations that we've both had kind of behind closed doors, and I don't think that many people are that open and honest about it. Sometimes when you're in a BDR role for a little bit, you start to kind of question yourself of like, would I be able to be a good AE? Like, would I be able to be a CSM? Like, am I good enough? Do I have all of the skills? Can I actually go this way? So I'm kind of curious to learn a little bit more. Like, I think that you experienced that based on some of our conversations, but I'm curious, like, how did you get over that? Or is it still a process that you're getting through? Like, did you talk to other mentors? Was it just something that, like, naturally you were just like, I'm just gonna have to suck it up, like, they're giving me this job, I can do it, I guess? Or I'm curious just to understand, like, that little piece of imposter syndrome.
So I could definitely say that I had it. And I will say that for the first 2 months in the CS role, my anxiety was skyrocketed, but it was because I was creating my own anxiety, telling myself, I'm not going to be able to do this. Like, you need to know, you definitely need to be a lot more product heavy than you were as a BDR. And, you know,
Totally.
my time at this company when we got acquired, like, my day to day was not spent trying to learn the ins and outs of the product. As you know, it was email messaging, phone calls. So once we got acquired, I needed to kind of be fast tracked to really get ramped up on the pieces of the product. Even though I had been working there for 2 years, there was so much that I was learning that I didn't even know that existed. And like I said, it was fast tracked. Like, they needed my help. They gave me a book of business. And within the first 2 weeks after, I worked really deeply with my manager that I currently have today on the CS team, and my team lead. Thank God for her, because she's been amazing. She helps me every day, all of my questions that I need answered. And really just leaned in on them. We met a couple times a week for the first 2 weeks. And then my manager kind of looked at me and was like, you can do this. And I was like, are you sure? Like, you're going to have me on a call with a customer by myself and this and that. And I will say the first couple of months, it was nerve-wracking. Like, they expect you to be an expert of the product and know every answer to every question. But after talking to my manager and team lead, like, there's so many things that even they get asked on a day-to-day that they might not know the answer to, because it's so company specific, scenario specific, different contracts, different versions of the platform, all of this. And, you know, I just kind of learned as I went, and kept telling myself every day that, like, I'm new at this. It's okay to say, that's a great question. Happy to get the answer for you. Or, I heard you, and I hear, you know, the struggles that you're having, or the complications that you're facing. Would love to loop in someone on the solutions team to kind of dive into this area that I might not be an expert on. You really just have to sell yourself and not sell yourself short. Like, even if you don't know what you're talking about, you got to fake it until you make it.
Yes. And especially with the questions that come up that you don't know the answer to, like, people are always going to respect and I don't know, but I'll get you the right answer if you give me a moment, way more than you like
Lying
like,
and
maybe it's this, like, and not being helpful. Like, when people ask questions, all they want is help. They don't necessarily, of course, they would love to have it right in that moment, right? But that's not always the reality. And as long as you're nice and open and honest, people are going to be understanding. And if they're not, because there's been customers, like I was on post-sales kind of customer-facing role for a little bit, most people are going to be nice. And if they're not, it says way more about them, in my opinion. I know that like the customer's always right and all of that, but if you're going to be mean to someone trying to help you, not nice.
At the end of the day, I think we've had our moments where like we've gotten off customer call, or not, I wouldn't say customer calls, but just like reverting back to BDR. Like, not everyone's going to be thrilled that you're picking up the phone and calling them randomly out of random, that you don't know them personally. You're calling it could be their cell phone. They could be dealing with something with their kids. They could be in the middle of their own work. Like, everyone's got lives and whatever, but you can't be afraid to pick up the phone. And at the end of the day, if the person's going to yell at you, scream at you, swear at you on the other end, again, it's a reflection of them, not you. You can't take that stuff personal. Like, I've worked with people that get so upset. And I'll admit, the first time someone was mean to me on the phone or rude to me, like, did I want to cry after? And did I maybe the first time? Probably.
Yeah, I think we've all cried after a bad cold call or a bad customer call. Like, it happens sometimes.
But then I think we've also gotten on like a huddle after and laughed about it and was like, this is one person in a world with millions and trillions of people. And it's like, who cares? Even if you failed on that call, or you didn't speak the way you wanted to speak, or what you were trying to reiterate didn't come out in the proper context, like, it's one person. There's a million more prospects to hit. Hang up, forget about it, move on, and hit them another day with different messaging or different, a phone conversation that's going to be different than how you originally reached out to them.
Totally. And I would say that, just from what you just shared, the BDR experience of having people like hang up on you or just message you the one word, like unsubscribe, or kind of like let loose on you over email for sending a personalized email, and you're like, whoa, what's going on here?
What is going on?
I'm assuming that helped give you a little bit more of like almost a thick skin, but also some tools to understand how to navigate those as a CSM. Is there anything else that you brought from like BDR, SDR experience to the CSM role specifically?
Oh, 100%. I think it goes back to prospecting, right? A huge challenge that I face today is, and companies change, people bop around to different companies all the time, jobs, roles are changing. Someone that signed a contract a year ago and their renewal's up and it's due like in a couple weeks or whatever, and say I message Mark at abc.com and his email bounces and I have no one else at the company that works there, I'm then going out and prospecting. I'm looking up on LinkedIn, for example, all the people that work at that company, who took over. I was using Mark at abc.com as an example. Who took over Mark's role? What's that new person's email? That person even know what we do as a company? Do they know like what we do today? And and you have to say, okay, Mark's no longer at this company. I have this new contact information, but you can't just send them exactly the message that you were sending to Mark, acting like they know what and who you're talking about. You then have to say like, hey, I was working with X from this company. I see they're no longer there. You are now in their role. It
essentially becomes an entire outbound campaign to try and get this person looped in and as bought in as your original kind of stakeholder was. So you're basically running on outbound campaigns. That's amazing. Why don't we kind of move into, so throughout this call, I feel like you've given so many nuggets of like feedback, insight. There's some actionable stuff that any SDR, BDR, someone even looking to break into tech can benefit from.
Yeah.
But why don't we move into like a little bit more structured advice for the person who might only have, 5 or 10 minutes to listen to this podcast, doesn't listen to the whole thing.
Yeah.
Want to talk through, for these last couple of minutes, what kind of advice would you have given to, if you think of yourself fresh out of college or fresh into your first sales role, like what advice would you give to that version of you? Because a lot of people listening to this will probably be in that exact stage.
I would say my top advice is you're a new person on a BDR SDR team. You, like I said, make connections with all of your peers on that team.
Yeah.
Find out who has the most free time on their hands as the BDR, or most experience, I would say, on the team, and use them as a crutch to help you grow and learn. And when I say by that is, I think I mentioned this at the beginning of the call, is book time with them, even if it's 30 minutes once a week. See what they're doing and see how you could take, the different things that you're doing in your day-to-day and either add what they're doing that's working for them, or kind of pivot and change the way that you're going about your day-to-day. And again, I would say is learn the product, whether they don't expect it out of you or not. Spend some extra time. Yeah, it might take you a little bit of time before work or after work, but that's only going to help you better navigate your day-to-day in your current roles. If you know what's going on, what's going on about the company, about the product, different changes that we're making, and everything along that nature. And it's only going to help you get better.
Yeah. Like, but the learning the product piece, I think that's huge, especially something that I've noticed from having like limited experience in post sales. I was in post sales for like 3 months. So you know this even better than I do, but also learn from the people who are actually using the product, because sometimes how you think that people are using something as a BDR, very different than what people are actually using. Like I would always be mind blown when I was in a post sales role by how people were actually using the solution, and they would know stuff that I didn't even know was possible, but tons of people were using the product that way. So I love the idea of understanding the product early on, because it is going to give you other pieces of value to highlight to potential customers, and it's going to be knowledge that you need as you move up in your career either way.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anything else to add there, or are we good to move on to my second piece of advice I want to get from you?
I think we're great.
Okay, awesome. So second piece is your little SDR Hannah self is like, okay, I want to do this. I want to move into a CS role. What advice would you give to somebody who's in that position right now? They're an SDR. They might have a few years experience. They might be, only 6 months in. It doesn't matter kind of where they're at, but they know that they want to move to a CSM. Is there anything that they should be doing right now in their current role to get there, or anything that you would suggest to them?
I would say like utilizing their network, right? Follow other people that are in CS roles at other companies. Start there, message them. I know we talked about that and we hammered home on that, like messaging people on LinkedIn. Hey, do you like the company you're working at? Like, can you tell me a little bit about your day-to-day? Do you like what you're doing? If you want to move into a CS role at the specific company that you're at, not outside of that company, have that conversation, a career path conversation, one, with your manager, and two, ask them, hey, if this is like what my career path, I want my career path to be, and this is what I want to do, who can you put me in contact with? And either they're going to say, well, there's no open positions right now, but you could be one of the first people we think about, when we do open something like that up. Or if you know that right off the bat and you know that there's not going to be a place or a position for you to grow in that given company, obviously that's when you need to start looking elsewhere. But as a BDR or SDR, you can 100% be a CS rep. Like I said, I feel like if I was coming from my old role as an account manager and going right into CS, and didn't have that experience as a BDR, SDR, I feel like I would be struggling more in my current role than I would have if I didn't, hadn't gone through all of those years being in sales.
Totally. I think that as much as a BDR, SDR role can be like a little bit looked down upon, if we're completely honest, it gives you so many foundational skills that you'll take with you through the rest of your tech career. And if you look at some of like the top leaders in tech companies that are like VPs or even like CROs, a lot of them did do some kind of like BDR, SDR work at some point in their career. And I'm sure that some of them are still using some of those skills that they built as an SDR, and they might not even really like consciously realize it. One last thing, and this is as broad as you want it to be. It can be as specific, but just in general, what is one thing you wish you knew sooner?
One thing that I wish I knew sooner, I just think with the shift of, working in office and working from home, like you have to really own time management. And again, what you put in is what you're going to get out. If you're behind on your quota and you're not putting in the hours and the time and the work that needs to be done, you're not going to hit your quota. Yeah, there are quarters where it's out of your control and you seriously you can't hit your number and you're not going to be attainable for that month or that quarter, whatever it may be. Yeah, that's 100% going to happen. You're not going to hit your number every single month or every single quarter. And if you don't hit one quarter, you can't let that get you down. I've missed a quarter before. I've missed a couple. Like it happens. It happens with the market that we're in and the way that things are going right now. But you have to constantly be able to pivot and control what you can control. There's going to be things that are out of your control in your day-to-day or in your current role, but there are definitely things that you can control and really drive hard on the things that you can control, and you will see success. It might, and the thing with sales or CS2, you have to be patient, like not every time does a customer want to buy more or buy right away. You might have good conversations with people, and it could be, I had a specific example years ago where I had reached out, I outbounded to a company for a year and 3 months. In a year and 3 months, they finally answered me because they realized they were a fit and they needed us, and this was going to work for them. And like I said, you just have to be patient and let things fall into place. But don't give up and don't lose hope. Like keep following up with people. 3 touches isn't enough on someone. Like how many times did I probably hit that same contact and same company for that year and couple months? Geez, I don't even want to know. It's probably if I knew the number, but you have to be persistent. You have to have thick skin. And you just have to not be afraid and be open, like open your heart to wanting to learn more from others. And that's going to make you the most successful in your career.
It's a combination of so many things. It's like mindset. It's
mindset, attitude,
being persistent. It's owning that your fate and your success is in your own hands in a lot of ways. I love all of those reminders. I think that as an SDR, BDR, you can fall into some traps of being negative or fall into, oh, I had a bad quarter, I'm screwed for the rest of the year. Or like, oh, I hit 0% this month. Like I'm so far behind. There's no gonna recovering from this. And you can end up in this like negative downward spiral of feeling like you don't have any control. And that is probably the worst place that you can be in this kind of role.
If you're constantly talking negatively about yourself, situations, like that's actually going to happen. Like negative things will happen. If you're constantly in a negative mindset, you're not willing to change or make changes and learn, like you're not going to succeed. And I hope that anyone that's listening to this, like feel free to reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. Always happy to have conversations, happy to answer any questions. And yeah, I'm happy that I was able to share with you some of the things that helped me in my career and things that I wish I knew that I know now. Yeah, super, super excited to help other BDRs and SDRs and learn either more about how they can be successful in either of those roles or pick my brain about how I moved from BDR to CS.
Yes, I will 100% provide, since you gave that call out, I will 100% provide your LinkedIn so that people can reach out, can connect. Hannah is super nice and very funny and great to talk to. So reach out to her if you are interested in that kind of path and want to learn more. Really appreciate your time, Hannah. And I think that so many people are going to benefit from kind of hearing about your experience.
Thanks so much, Kelly.
So that's a wrap on episode 2 of Her Mentor. I will be back here same time next week with our next guest. But if you don't want to have to remember to come find our latest episodes, you can always follow us on Spotify or subscribe on YouTube so that you never miss a new episode. Also, if you're enjoying Her Mentor podcast, please leave us a rating. It helps this podcast reach a larger audience and help other women and share stories with a larger group of women. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you next week.